I used to live in Albion, California. It's just south of Mendocino, and the very first place I lived was in a small house above the Navarro cliffs, and down from the cliffs was the Navarro River. And over the years I developed this great love of this place, and I don't know if any of you have over the years, if you're close by a beach or a park or a place that you go camping a lot, have developed this love of a particular place. And it, as I walk there, and I spent 2 weeks there a little bit before I came here, every morning I would get up, and you already know I'm an insomniac, so I give myself permission at 5. Like, no, you can't get out of bed until 5 a.m. Sometimes I do, but anyway, at 5 I get up and I make tea, and then I offer metta to the 4 directions while I drink my tea, and then I go down to wherever I can walk. If I'm in a city, then I'll go to the nearest park, but if I'm in Albion, then I'll always go to Navarro River. And it has become such a refuge for me. And so I wanted to tonight talk about mindfulness and the way that mindfulness is such an elicited response to those special places that we love. When I go there, and I've gone there probably thousands of times by now, I can say that every time it's different. Sometimes the river doesn't make it all the way through to the ocean, and it expands out, into the beach, so there's less and less walking. Sometimes if it does make it to the ocean, which it does, but the end of November it made it to the ocean, then often the seals come to the bank that no one can get to, and so the seals visit the river. And sometimes with the tides, the ocean dumps tons of sand onto the beach, and sometimes it takes tons of sand away. So I'll notice over time that a rock that I like to perch on is like in the middle of the ocean and I can't get to it. And then other times, because there's more sand that's been dumped on the beach, I can actually climb on it and hang out with the place where often the birds like to hang out too. And I notice that I'm noticing. I'm aware that I'm being present. And that one of the definitions of mindfulness is bearing witness. And I know that I'm bearing witness in each visit to this life that I love. The color of the river, how the sky is it raining, is it sunny, that I'm bearing witness to it. And that I delight in every day bearing that witness. Sometimes it takes a while to come to that. Sometimes my mind is more distracted. I'm like acknowledging the life of this river and the birds that are there. There's always at least one grey heron and an egret, sometimes more, sometimes just one of them. I'm bearing witness to them. I feel like I get to know them, even family members or ancestors. And in a way, I feel like they're bearing witness to me too, somehow. It reminds me of what Mother Teresa said to an interviewer for, I I can't remember what newspaper. And the question was, so when you pray, what do you say to God? And Mother Teresa said, I just listen, which I take to mean bearing witness. And then the interviewer said, well, so then what does God say to you? And Mother Teresa said, God listens as well. And I love that, because that feels so close to the listening that we're doing, the listening to ourselves, our life, each other, what's happening with the weather, the different quality of the soil, what I don't know, because I haven't heard you report, because I haven't asked, but maybe I will in your next interviews, what you've noticed about the trees and about whatever it is that you have been bearing witness to. And that over time, maybe as you bear witness to yourself or to your body, there is that feeling that your body and yourself is bearing witness to your witnessing as well. So this is one of the beautiful ways that we are mindful. It's in this capacity to bear witness. And I know that there are times in our lives that, like going to Navarro River, where it's elicited beautifully, because we're through so many prayers and so many mindful steps, it becomes sacred. And we can intentionally cultivate that too, that as the river is this place, so can be our lives in the same way. And that as we notice the different changes of what's happening in nature, so too we come to notice all the different changes that are happening inside of us. And mindfulness has this capacity. It's one of the most beautiful aspects of mindfulness that we're cultivating. Mindfulness is the great leader in the energies of our freedom and our liberation. The Buddha said in the Satipatthana Sutta, if you practice this quality of mind for 7 years, and then he says no for 7 months, no, he says then for 7 weeks, and then he said no, for 7 days continually, your mind will be liberated. That's how important mindfulness is. And so when we talk about mindfulness, we're not just talking about this single quality, this energy. We're talking about a factor that actually creates the path, is the leader of the path towards liberation. And to this morning, or maybe yesterday, I lifted up for us, or named our experience, that there are times when we have opened to a moment without greed, hatred, or delusion, which is the foretaste of a mind that can eventually live without any of those fires. In fact, the Buddha said that nirvana was the ending or the burning out of the fuels of greed, hatred, and delusion. It was the ending of the fires of those energies. And mindfulness is the great leader in that, which is why it is our main practice. And so I wanted to, because it's so central to this, I wanted to offer all the different aspects of mindfulness that make up this path, because it's such a leader. Not the only one, but one of the main leaders in creating the conditions for the burning out of the fuel. So this morning I talked about, or we are being invited to a relationship of belonging, of communion, of relatedness, of coming into connection with. And mindfulness is the main capacity, along with loving kindness, that enables us to do that. So that when mindfulness is mature, and there again, I don't want to talk about it as like this far off thing, but those moments when mindfulness is mature, that connection with just a breath or a sensation or sensations or breaths or food or whatever it is, when the connection is fully connected, then it's the passageway to the connection with the whole of the universe and the world. It's like something opens up. I don't know if this is true of Alice in Wonderland. Was it that she goes down this tunnel and then it opens up into the whole world? Or another world? Well, anyway, that's the possibility, not that we're going through the tunnel, but that in the lineage that I trained in Ubekin's lineage, he centered a lot of the teaching on the body and noticing the body. And there are a lot of other teachers that we've trained with, or that some of us have trained with, who talk about all the different other aspects equally apart from the body. But Goenka and Ubekin, the teacher who empowered Goenka, and Ruth Dennison, my teacher, he stressed that a lot, that it just takes this full knowing, bearing witness to any moment, for that moment to open into that belonging, communion, non-separation. I'm a part of this world. That's the power and the magic and the blessing and the capacity that we have. And that's why we're in training in the ways that we're in training, because of that power. So this aspect of bearing witness, of knowing the experience as it is, as a receptive relatedness, as receiving, knowing, connecting, caring. I don't know why, but it sort of burnt itself into me when I talked about mindfulness after coming back from my mother's death, because that experience of being with her for 17 days in her dying process, and of washing her down and changing her nappy, and putting glycerine on her lips and moving her so she didn't get bed sores. And because she was unconscious, I could sing to her and talk to her and chant to her in a way that I could never have done if she was conscious. So it felt like this special time when I could sing her metta, knowing or believing anyway that somewhere her consciousness, even though she was unconscious, but some deeper consciousness was feeling the energy of that. And in that situation, that bearing witness to the changes of her body, how bloated her face became, how red it became, of slowly, beginning to notice more blue in her toes, just noticing that process and being so present and caring at the same time, and how that presence to the process brought that such deep communion with, here is a life that is passing, and in a way part of my life passing as well, because no matter what the relationship of our moms are, there's something always deep about it, right? So this receiving, interested, caring, wanting to know what was happening, alertness, all these qualities infusing the knowing that establishes this type of relationship. That begins to open things, So bearing witness. And in the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha invites mindfulness, non-reactive, non-discriminatory awareness. And so this is the other aspect of awareness that is so beautiful, is that it has the capacity, mindfulness has the capacity to discern where there's suffering and where there isn't suffering. Because if it didn't have that capacity, how would we know? But it's this knowing and recognition of, oh, I'm having this thought and this is the experience of it. It isn't serving me. It's bringing me into an old habitual space. That discernment is the discernment of mindfulness. And it's so beautiful because it's the basis of us then being able to actually manifest this path, the path of the ending of suffering, the path of discerning, where am I holding on, where am I attached, where am I in confusion, where am I being in a habitual response and mode. And in that discernment, making the choice. Sometimes we talked about not always being able to make it, but orienting to make the choice, to choose not to go, to affirm, to build the energies that bring us suffering. So when we have a tape running through our heads over and over again that says, I can't believe this, or this person that, or I am so, whatever it is, that kind of, energy, that acknowledgement of awareness allows us to make this choice of, I am choosing the path, the Eightfold Path of Liberation, by refraining from going down that path. So mindfulness as this empowered choice maker in our own lives. And without it, we know already from all the decisions that are made in this world how decision after decision gets made through the old habitual minds, that when there isn't that presence, operate in uncaring, in separation, in following the path that feels like it's building an anchor for us, when in actuality we're building separation and distancing and a shut down and defended heart. So it's mindfulness as we bring it into our lives through our breath, that begins to like call us to this warning light of, oh, Arinna, you've gone down that path so many times. Like, this is a very classic one. Like, I'll give a Dharma talk and it just isn't quite flowing, maybe even like tonight. It's okay, but it's not quite flowing. So that's how it is, right? And then sometimes at the end of the Dharma talk, I would leave the room and there would be this like little collapsing that would happen, like, oh my God, I gave this Dharma talk, it wasn't quite flowing, to everyone in the room, and there would be this sort of feeling of shame and cringing. And that, of course, comes from so much conditioning in the educational system and from our families and the ways we strive to perfect ourselves in order to be loved. So much conditioning, right, about being successful and having perfect Dharma talks. And it's like, and you know it, you know that's happening, you know that this is my particular thing, but we all have it, that particular energy that happens. And then just this, like, just the knowing of it, even if in the moment that knowing doesn't dissolve it, just the knowing, I know I'm caught, is the very beginning of the path of then, in hopefully the next few minutes, but maybe not, maybe later on, that final knowing of, right, I don't have to go there. That's mindfulness. That's mindfulness with the wisdom of our experience, and that wisdom of our experience comes from another aspect of mindfulness, which is remembering and memory. Like, mindfulness has that remembering and memory, and that's another definition of it, that contextualizes each moment of experience so that you know, we know, this isn't serving me. Because I don't know about you, but it used to be that somehow, because I was so hurt, I would choose to continue to be hurt in some weird misunderstanding that if I hurt more, I would be liberated. Did that ever come up for you? Like, just that much conditioning, old conditioning? That's the habitual mind. And just the recognition of just, oh, this is what's happening, even if it doesn't change, is the beginning of the path of liberation. And that recognition is mindfulness. So we're just like, it feels in a way to me like, you know, there's all these stories about, fairy stories about grandmothers and Cinderella with the grandmother. Was it the grandmother coming down with the magic wand or something? Well, it wasn't the grandmother. Some person, was it? No, that wasn't Cinderella. Godmother. Was it the three sisters? Was that Cinderella? Yeah. So with the wand, and then, you know, she's beautiful and in a ball, and I mean a carriage, and going to the ball. And Ruth used to say this to me. She would say, this is what is sacred. This is our magic wand. This is mindfulness. That's why we keep slogging at it, because it's this heart of recognition and liberation and transformation. And how is it that I, and I start with myself because that's always so helpful, made such terrible choices in my youth? Because I didn't have a lot of mindfulness in my mind that could discern what was helpful. I would say that there also wasn't a lot of love. How is it that there are so many decisions made that bring harm in the world, not because people are bad, and I don't say that I was bad too, but because there wasn't mindfulness in the mind. And when I'm talking about mindfulness in this way, I'm talking about mindfulness that is companioned deeply with caring. And more recently, the scholars like Analayo of the early Buddhist texts talk about mindfulness almost synonymously with caring, that kind of openness of listening and bearing witness is presence and caring combined in this sort of relatedness. And there wasn't a lot of it. There was enough to bring me to the Dharma, but there was a lot of not it that became the conditions for breaking many of the precepts and harming myself and other people. And so when we see, when we think about, well, like, where is my capacity? Oh, I don't know, I wouldn't say it that way, but often what can I do? Like when we feel a bit of a loss, what can I do? It's like mindfulness. That's what the Buddha is saying. He's saying, go to mindfulness. And he isn't saying, oh, you have to wait to go to a retreat or you have to do formal meditation. So you know that, for those of you who've heard many of my Dharma talks, that I quote Ruth in the story of us coming back from Hollywood, driving to Dharma Dana. It was probably around midnight. And she stopped the car. We were in the desert. She stopped the car. She got out. She didn't tell me what she was doing. She went to the side of the road. She left the headlights on. She'd pick up a rock and she'd carry it to the other side of the road, bend down all the way, place it on the ground, and then pick it up again and walk across the road and place it down. And I was like, what is she doing? And so she did it for about 10 minutes, and then she came back into the car, and I said, Ruth, what are you doing? And she said, I was losing mindfulness. I love that. That is so beautiful, because it's this unmitigated dedication to supporting this liberating factor in the mind. Just by that, and that just speaks to that it can be this quality of calling it into being by doing whatever it is. This is just one of the smallest parts of it, right? Because it can be just like putting on our clothes in the morning, or brushing our teeth, or sometimes, if nothing else is doing it for me, like it feels a little far away, like you're looking through a telescope, and it, like, not those things that change patterns, and you look at it the wrong way and it's like so far away. Sometimes mindfulness feels like that, right? And so I have to do something really different, like hang upside down from my bed, with my head like this, and my feet on the bed, and I'm just hanging upside down, and I slowly come all the way to the ground. Like something like that will bring me back into connection. So, whatever it is, this way of acknowledging what makes us precious amazing, beautiful beings, because mindfulness comes through each of us in slightly new, unique expressions, not ever exactly the same, because we, each of us, are unique. And that this capacity, the Buddha says, is the deepest blessing of being a human being, to know, and through that knowing to like bow down to the teacher of mindfulness. So that when he died, and Ananda, who was so adoring of him, Ananda was the person who supported him and brought him food and helped organize the Sangha coming to meet him and that kind of stuff. The manager. And was the manager. And so the Buddha is lying down, and he said, I'm going to die in such and such a date. And then it happened that he accepted dinner from someone who wanted to pay his regards, and the Buddha knew that the food was poisoned, and he wanted to accept the dinner to honor the generosity of the person offering him dinner. And so he was poisoned, and he said, I'm going to die. Okay. And so anyway, I don't exactly remember the timing, but so he's lying down and Ananda's crying, and the Buddha said, why are you crying? Haven't I said that you are a lamp, your own lamp that will guide you in the Dharma? And that's our lamp, this capacity that we have. And I'm not saying, and that this, I want to name our reality, that it isn't that easy, because if it was, then we'd all be enlightened. But it is accessible. And it's just that we forget. In the context of our lives and our busyness, we forget the luminosity and power of the quality of mindfulness. I do over and over again. And what I love about being at a center is that it's structured, and about having sanghas is that we are creating these postures in our life, whatever they are, to remind us again, oh, I'm living with this sacred possibility. And I pray that, like Ruth, I can bow down to it and serve it, this quality of heart and mind. That is my great protector. And, and along with that is, of course, making great effort, when we have to make great effort to bring the energy to mindfulness so that it's strong. And when we think of using the simile of a path, like the way, or like a river, the way the Grand Canyon, the Colorado River, has cut over thousands of years into the rock to make the Grand Canyon. And when I think of the many, many habitual moments that have cut into my own mind, a little bit like the Grand Canyon. Going back to the example of the shame, sometimes that shame, it feels like the Grand Canyon, like it's been so habitually believed that I'm like right down in it, yeah? And it's like, oh my God, can I do this? Do I have the energy, the capacity to actually claw my way out of the Grand Canyon? And sometimes I can't even actually intend it myself. I have to say, I'm calling on you, ancestors. Just like the Buddha called on the power of the earth. I'm calling on you, or I call on you, Ruth. I call on you to help me. And it might be that you have different ways of calling that work for you, but I do that, and it's like, okay, and then that openness to feel that possible visitation of the Dharma, the grandmother with the wand, the Dharma coming through, to like say, no, Arinna, you can't go there. No. You absolutely can't go there. Like that. No, I'm taking a stand now in my wisdom to say this is not serving me. I'm taking a stand. Yeah. And then in saying this, we kind of, in naming this whole process, we're naming then to make the link that this is not ever just for ourselves, that when we do it for ourselves, then of course we bring that strength to our relationships. And if we bring it to our relationships, it means we're at the very beginning trying to build a new culture, right? A new culture of that kind of strength, of refraining and saying, no, that's harmful, I can't do that. Or if we do, I'm sorry, I want to own that was harmful, I want to apologize. Yeah. So this beautiful quality, and it's easy sometimes, especially when we're having a hard time, to forget why we're doing it, isn't it? Yeah. And so it's great to have, to remember that it's this lamp, this light that lives inside of us, that we can call into being to light our path. Yeah. So let's see, maybe I will, let's see. Maybe just want to follow the line of, or reiterate, because it just bears reiteration over and over again, that the beautiful energies of mindfulness and caring, of faith, of patience, of renunciation, of being ethical, forgiveness, of appreciative joy and compassion, of wisdom, that these beautiful energies are the energies that are the building blocks and structure of a liberated mind. When we talk about nirvana, nirvana comes through the practice of these energies. It isn't that far away. We build the strength of the fireplace through practicing these qualities, and then through that strength begin to challenge the habitual energies of greed, revenge, clinging, hatred, sloth, torpor, anxiety, and particularly doubt. And it's so we could say that this process of cultivating the wholesome and abandoning the unwholesome is this one of the pivotal expressions of the path of liberation, and that the leader of the wholesome is mindfulness, that it is through that discernment that we cultivate all the beautiful qualities. So I mentioned this before, and I want to say it again because it's such an amazing mantra, that if there's any thought that doesn't come from the beautiful qualities of patience, kindness, What haven't I mentioned? Faith. Then it's not true. If there's any thought that comes from anger, irritation, ill will, aversion, greed, wanting, desire, compulsion, fear, anxiety, depression, sloth, torpor, and doubt. All those truths are distorted and not accurate perceptions. They're all untrue, unwise, and supportive of suffering and separation, and the opposite of freedom. And I know that we know it, but it's like a mantra. When you keep repeating something over and over again, it creates its own path in our mind so that we're pulled back, right? Because what we think about is what we create in the world. And so to be so careful through our mindfulness of really interrupting when we have habitual thoughts that take over our mind, interrupting them. Of course, when mindfulness is strong, then we see them and they come and they go. But if we notice that we're engaged in them and thinking them, then they need to be interrupted. So, okay. Maybe I'll read two things to end with. Oh no, maybe I'll just read one of my favorite poems. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon, know who she is. I met her in a bar once in Iowa City. Remember the sun's birth at dawn, that is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away tonight. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father, he is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are, red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth, we are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them, they are alive poems. Remember the wind, remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. I heard her singing Kiowa war dance songs at the corner of 4th and Central once. Remember that you are all people and that all people are you. Remember that you are this universe and that this universe is you. Remember that all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember that language comes from this. Remember the dance that language is, that life is. Remember. So let's sit for a moment. Well, we're sitting already. Let's just take a moment to allow the words to settle. bowing down to the light, discernment, power and wisdom of our mindfulness. Thank you.